I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates, Mina Kimes.
All right, so first play we're going to look at 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
It happened. The thing everybody thought was going to happen happened. The Patriots hired Mike Vrabel in what, at the end of the day, turned out to be really kind of a shambolic interview process. Doesn't mean it's not going to result. It might not end positively. So we'll talk a little bit about the process, the thought behind Vrabel, and whether or not, we feel that he's the guy for the job. I will say, if you've watched us throughout the course of the week, the last year, whatever it is, we've all kind of planted our flags. I've always been an offensive-minded head coach guy. Taylor, I think, really started to warm to the idea of Ben Johnson in recent days. But Mike Kadlick's been on the Mike Vrabel train since last year. So we're going to start with Mike, just on your reaction on the hire.
Yeah. I tweeted it as simple as, I think, 2 words this morning. It was the right hire. And I think realistically, this would have been the right hire last year as well, where they wanted to keep, a semblance of continuity towards this Patriot way, which, as we know, feels kind of fabricated and was really the Bill Belichick and Tom Brady way. But, long story short, it keeps some familiarity in the building, which, clearly we know that that's what the Crafts prioritize at this point. But I think just the way last year was rushed with Gerard Mayo, this brings a professional back into the room as somebody who's done this before at a high level, at a successful level. He's been to AFC Championship games. He's been to the playoffs. He went to 3 straight, led the Titans to 3 straight playoff appearances. And he's just a leader of men, and he's a culture builder.
I love that phrase.
But it's the truth. It's not a buzzword. That's what you need in this league. You really do. And that's why I leaned Vrabel the entire time. Now, when we did our crossover, me, Taylor, Alex, and Brian the other day, we sort of had it was me and Alex were on team Vrabel and him and Brian were on team Ben Johnson. At the end of the day, the 4 of us agreed that either way it would have been a good hire because, again, they were the 2 top candidates on the market. It's not like either way would have been bad. Now, we can talk about the way the interview process went, which I know we'll get into here. And that sort of adds a little bit of a dark cloud over it. But at the end of the day, I still think they landed on the right decision. He's brought in offensive minds before that have had success. Matt LaFleur, head coach. Arthur Smith was a head coach. Now, granted, Pittsburgh wasn't great last night, but he's had success outside of that building. And so I look at this and I think there's a lot more work to do. You need to bring in a support staff. You need to evolve. He needs to evolve from, an analytics side of things from where he was in Tennessee. But at the end of the day, with the experience, someone who comes in and what he's going to bring to this team, I think it was a great hire, and I'm excited to see how it ultimately plays out.
Taylor, I'm curious for you because, as I said, you kind of moved to the Ben Johnson stuff. That doesn't mean Vrabel's a bad choice. We kind of had a preferred choice. So I think the Ben Johnson stands, myself among them, weren't sure whether he would be a head coach. We were really excited about the possibility of like an offensive genius being paired with Drake May, but you still have to feel generally good directionally with the hire.
Yeah, and I spoke to Paul Kuharski, who has been with the Titans for a very long time, covered Vrabel for his entire tenure, and he shed a lot of light on what Vrabel was like as a head coach. Now, the positive things, Vrabel obviously, honestly, we already know all the positives. He instills the culture. He's going to bring toughness. You're going to have an identity, which the Patriots didn't have last year. And there's also the element of he's going to, I know it's kind of gone wrong that he might ruffle some feathers. Or, some people are going to have to eat some humble pie because he's going to have a certain standard and he's going to tell some people no. Last year, the collaboration, I think a lot of us were more open-minded to it, knowing that Bill Belichick, having overruled so many of his scouts for so many years, having people leave because they were underpaid and not being listened to and all those things. It's like, yeah, you would like for people to feel like their opinions matter, but it felt like they swung too far in the other direction. And now it's kind of got to be, all right, more middle ground, not even middle ground, maybe more sway towards, no, I'm the guy with the vision for the franchise. I'm going to do it this way. Some of the negatives and the things that worried me, just so people have a full picture, because I do agree Mike Vrabel is the hire they probably should have made. And I will not deny that for a team that was disorganized, that was dysfunctional, that really lacked any level of credibility. Not only last season, but really the 2 seasons before that, when you talk about the offense, last year became the defense and the entire team. But what kind of concerned me was, one, you mentioned Arthur Smith. Mike LaFleur, they were already on the Titans staff. Vrabel didn't actually hire those guys. So that's one concern. And then after them, his hire was Todd Downing, who was a complete disaster. Todd Downing ended up getting a DUI. We talked about this on our crossover, but he got a DUI.
You can't put Todd Downing's DUI on Mike Vrabel.
Huh? No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But I'm saying, like, as a coordinator, he wasn't good. He's with the Jets now. He's their quarterbacks coach in something else.
He ended up taking over. He took over play calling when they strip it from Nathaniel Hackett this year.
Yeah, and it's not been very good. So, like, Todd Downing was not a good hire. Shane Bowen, there were people that were really back and forth because they didn't really love. I know there was a lot of vanilla play calling, people say, for the defense and the fronts and things like that. So, when it comes to the hires, I'm going to be very curious where Vrabel goes, and also the forward-thinking element, where Albert Breer has been very open about the fact the Patriots are so behind right now with their analytics department, with their scouting department. Can Mike Vrabel's time in Cleveland, I'm sure we'll get into this later, actually help him move them forward in that direction? And also, can he fill out the coaching staff with guys who are going to bring the best out of players the way that he does as a head coach?
I'll add two things to that quickly. Is one, according to reports, he did take in and learn a lot in Cleveland. Now, we also know Mike Vrabel can be stubborn, and stuck in his ways might be strong, but he's Mike Vrabel. He has that ambiance about him. So did he actually take it? Is he going to take it all and learn from it? The other thing is that staff, Taylor. I think that is where we turn here. That's the massive thing we have to look at, where Ben Johnson's support staff, if all hit, the ones you've talked about, the Darren Rizzies, the Louis Anarumos, that would have been money. Yeah. Same with Mike Vrabel. He brings the culture. He brings the experience that Johnson would have brought. Now you just worry about, again, which is the most important part of the team, Drake May, and how they fill out the rest of the staff. That's the most important part here now.
So, and again, I'm going to piggyback on this as well. Is it's myth versus man regards to Vrabel here in terms of what's real and what's not. Like, I believe the no nonsense leader of men sort of stuff. For sure. I learned analytics in 1 year as a kind of consultant. I don't think so. I think that was very much a rehabilitation sort of stint, and also just kind of putting that information out there, which is okay. Spent some time with the foremost, thinking analytical department, in the league right now. So I can kind of put that beside me, because again, it's not really clear exactly why he was fired, but part of it was, some personal differences with ownership. Another was simply stuck in his ways, a little bit antiquated, bit of a dinosaur, conservative play calling style. How much of that, conservative approach, smash mouth football in a time where things have moved forward. So how much did he learn? I don't know. How much is he going to be reliant on the offensive coordinator? Too much, in my opinion. I hate the idea of, I'm not doing the offense, but I'll find someone good because I don't like that. I really did. I thought that was the most appealing aspect of Ben Johnson, or an offensive-minded coach in general. Its system doesn't leave with him. But also this idea of turning organizations around or the hires, as Taylor, you guys said, he inherited some of the people who went on to continue on and do other things. He also inherited a 9-7 team and turned them into a 9-7 team. And then, just for good measure, came back and they were 9-7 again the following year. So we're like a tick above Jeff Fisherland here when it comes to overall. And I know he took them to a AFC title game, the following year, but it's not like wizardry, like there's nothing on the resume here that jumps hugely off the page other than he's going to clean up that mess from before, which is fine. But I wonder, is that enough?
And one thing I think is important to note is that he did not have a quarterback when he was in Tennessee.
Bingo.
Ryan Tannehill had some of his best seasons for sure, but Derrick Henry, like, I know people get really mad. It's like, oh, the first down runs, you're just running it. I mean, Derrick Henry's entire style is, yes, you run when he has 2 yards per carry going into halftime, because at some point the defense is going to break down.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Exactly. And it's proven, like, yes, it didn't work 100% of the time, but when you have Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're going to lean on Derrick Henry to break the defense's back before you start saying, hey, Tannehill, we're going to give you the ball. And we saw with even someone as great as Bill Belichick, when you don't have a quarterback, obviously it's not a one-to-one situation, but we saw how Belichick struggled really mightily when he didn't have a good enough quarterback to not even make up for the defense. The defense was fine, but the offense was putrid. So when we have this discussion about Mike Vrabel and the conservative play calling when he was in Tennessee, we have to also remember he didn't have anything close to Drake May. And we'll talk about the offensive coordinator candidates after, but I really do feel like, obviously, critical situations, Vrabel's going to have a say, but I do think that he's going to have more of he'll lean more towards aggressiveness. I would at least hope with someone like Drake who can be so.
When you have that quarterback, you have to. And I think that his sort of CEO, like we're back to the former Patriots linebacker, CEO, head coach who's going to lean on his assistants. And for better or for worse, that's what we sit on. But Vrabel's done it before, and that's what I keep going back to. And I feel like a broken record because I've said it since the last week since they fired Mayo. But the issues here were so much more than just like the offense or just the defense. It was a crippling culture, and we found out this week from the story in the Boston Herald. And so I think that Vrabel brings that back. And to the offensive point, I know he's a defensive head coach, and I know he only did spend a year in Cleveland, but he worked with the tight ends. He worked with the offensive line. He worked with those guys in Tennessee as well. So I think that he's going to have at least some say in like the game management aspect of that. But if they bring in Josh McDaniels, which we'll get to it and all the sides sort of point to that, that's somebody who you can give the offense as an offensive head coach. And you're not giving it to Alex Van Pelt like you did last year, where he's never had that kind of experience. Josh has done this before. So I think the upside here, again, the 9-7 team to a 9-7 with Drake May, with an experienced head coach, with an experienced OC. I don't want to say this can turn around quickly because the roster is still the roster and there's still a lot of work to do. This is only step one, but we talk about ceiling and floor with these guys. I still think there's a high ceiling depending on what you put around Mike Vrabel.
Sure. I mean, it's, again, I think definitely don't want to jumble the what can Vrabel do for you. I'm not convinced yet any more than professionalism, accountability, and the ability to lead an organization, which is really freaking hard. And I think a lot of first-year coaches don't come into their own for a while. I think that's the...
And I wonder if that's what made the Crafts hesitant on Ben Johnson.
Yeah. And that's, and maybe that did. I don't think all first-year head coaches are made equal. Gerard Mayo had 5 years as a positional assistant. Most guys have 6-7 years doing that, plus several years as a coordinator or assistant head coach before they even get a whisper of a head coaching job. So most of these other hot OC, hot DC candidates have been doing this for a much longer time. But again, being in charge of an offense and being in charge of the team and being the voice of the organization and the leader and the person that sets the tone, that's different. And again, we talked about Mayo a lot. Like, I really do feel it was like, when I'm going to be a parent, I'm going to let my kids do whatever I want. And then they do, and you lose control of the house.
That's exactly
fast.
What it is. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I'm going to let them jump on the bed and they're going to eat chocolate cake and it's going to be amazing. And then it's like, oh shit, I can't get them to do anything. And that's what happened.
How do I get this chocolate stain out of the comforter?
That's what happened. That's what happened there. So again, I don't know what Vrabel can do yet, but I think it's obviously an upgrade over where they were. And you said it at the very top of the show, Mike. And even Robert Kraft, I believe, kind of alluded to it in his statement. If you read between the lines a little bit, and I'll pull it up. Just to play around here, but the thing with this statement that really stood in my mind was how he kind of said Gerard was kind of a hot name, and I felt I had to do it, and I had to promise him all of that stuff, and I had to bring him on because I was afraid other people were going to. I feared I would lose him. Right. I'm looking at it now. Committed to making him our next coach, and that to me reads as two things. And again, part of it is. I kind of had to do it because I wrote it into his contract. So we had no choice last year. I really believed, you said Vrabel should have been the coach. I believe if this was not written into Gerard Mayo's contract, Vrabel, what the hell
what are we doing
that?
Here?
Never seen that in my life.
There we go.
I didn't know we could do circles. I believe Vrabel, if in a straight search, if he knew Vrabel was available and Mayo wasn't promised it, even if Mayo had been given assurances without it being written into the contract, I think Vrabel's the coach last year. I think Kraft had buyer's remorse. I think he knew he left a candidate on the table he slightly preferred, but I think he had to go through with Mayo as a leap of faith. So that's why I think this was such an easy shift for them to make. And again, this is us speculating and reading between the lines, but it is what it is. They interviewed 4 guys. One of them was virtual. They can't hire him until after the Super Bowl, possibly. And then the 2 other interviews, we have a good idea what those were about. So the process was a bit of a sham. So I'm going to ask you right now, are you upset they didn't even if the 2 obvious candidates were Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel, are you at least annoyed that they didn't go through the full process and do this whole thing like properly, talk to a bunch of different people, get outside perspectives, take time to make the choice? Or do you think they had to rush into it, lock in Vrabel before they ended up with their 7th choice? Because I understand both sides of it. You rush into it, you're the first to fire, first to hire, you at least get a guy you like. You wait, Vrabel gets impatient, he goes somewhere else, Johnson spurns you, and you're in no man's land.
I was disappointed that it wasn't more thorough, and I don't think that meant that you had to cast a wide net. Like, I'm not saying you interview every single person. I think that, that's kind of a waste of time. But I do think with the series candidates, like, one, I think the whole Rooney Rule part just looks terrible.
Disgusting.
Really bad. Like,
they took it to another level. Teams do this all the time. They made it worse.
You had 2 people that have been out of football for 2 years, didn't have experience as a head coach, at least at the NFL level. So it's like, we know, obviously, you're doing this so you can get it done as quickly as possible because they're not in the league, they're not in the playoffs or anything, so you can get them in very quickly. So that felt really shady, especially if there's no spot for them necessarily on the roster. Because it's one thing if it's an Adrian Clem situation where I kind of understand because you're interviewing for a potential role. But if it literally was just get these guys in the building, we're done with the rule. Like Aaron Glenn declined the interview. I don't know how much of it had to do with them skirting the Rooney Rule so fast and that leaving a bad taste in his mouth, or him just knowing that Vrabel was the candidate. Like how Vrabel was told Tom Brady, I'm not going to interview with the Raiders because I'm probably going to New England. So my bigger issue is, one, you screwed yourself with even getting the chance to get Aaron Glenn in the door. Probably would have been a disingenuous interview anyway, but I think there's still value, especially when you have guys from the Lions, one of the best cultures and most places with some level of sustained success in recent history. You don't even get them in for an in-person interview to really dig in and see, what makes that organization go, what they think about where the league is trending and all these things. Like, you haven't done a head coaching search as the owner of the Patriots. It's just, or at least in a couple decades. So I just thought it was a huge missed opportunity. You don't have to interview everybody who wants a head coaching job, but at least take it seriously beyond just one candidate. And I thought as the top place to go, I think that's been said by multiple people. It's not like there's a whole lot of debate. It's the Patriots and it's the Bears. The Patriots probably have a better situation overall because of their resources. I just don't think they needed to rush into it, but I also don't know. Maybe this was the kind of thing where Vrabel would have been shakier if there was more time. I don't know. I just felt that the process was disappointing.
It's possible. In addition to the sham nature of the interview, one of the things I thought was honestly the worst part of the whole thing,
just ridiculous,
is that they literally grouped the two head coaches that didn't have a chance, who, again, speculation was to satisfy and check the box on the Rooney Rule. The first 2 interviews, people out, and they lumped them together into one tweet. I think the handling of it is so freaking bad.
It's embarrassing.
And then reaching out with the Glenn. So again, it's strange to me that people don't. Ultimately, none of this might matter if Vrabel's the guy, but the process is wrong here. You have not conducted a legitimate head coaching search since 1996 or whenever you hired Pete Carroll. Everyone else you've brought in, including Bill Belichick, when he came in, you had familiarity with. Belichick had worked with Parcells and he'd been part of the staff here. And Kraft even said, I kind of lamented not going in that direction the first time, but I couldn't get there with it, and he was doing whatever. And then you go from that to Mayo on a whim, on a trip to Israel, and then you go with Vrabel, again, with whom you have a relationship of familiarity. I mean, this institutional thinking isn't great. It's really not the way to do it. After messing it up as badly as you did last year and just handing the keys to an inexperienced head coach without talking to anybody else, to not talk to people again this year, I don't really fully understand it.
And to so they bring in Pep Hamilton, they bring in Byron Leftwich, they lump him into the tweet. That's a bunch of crap and embarrassing and not the way to do it and not the way other teams do it. There are other teams who come in and have their head coaching search and have multiple searches in a day and still have the decency to give the guys their own damn announcement tweet. Like, the way they did that was pathetic, and everybody knows it.
And again, none of this has, I know people are in here like, hey, guys, Vrabel's good. He is good.
Correct.
We're not.
No one's arguing that.
No one's
Right,
arguing that Vrabel was a good choice and likely an upgrade in terms of what needs fixing from last year, which is it was a complete shit show top to bottom in terms of direction and organization and discipline and accountability.
And so then they
sorry.
They get the backlash for skirting the Rooney Rule with the two really fast, currently unemployed minority candidates. And so then they hear all that, and then they miss out on asking Aaron Glenn at the same time as Ben Johnson. And then they try and get that one under the rug to make it look like they're doing a bigger search. And Glenn basically says, F you, I know exactly what you're doing. Again, that's all speculation. But if you know, like if you go into this thing last week, Sunday, Monday, and you look at your list of candidates, you saw Ben Johnson and you requested him, and you knew Aaron Glenn's there, and you said, no, we don't want to talk to him right now. And then all of a sudden, 3 days later, you think that he is a guy that we want to speak to now. It just smells. It doesn't add up. It looks shady. Now, again, I do think they brought in Ben Johnson, and I do believe that they probably sat in that virtual Zoom meeting with him and listened to everything he had to say and were open-minded to the fact that they could be wooed by him.
Yeah.
Clearly, though, and what did you say, Taylor?
I said especially Elliott and maybe Jonathan.
That's what
so
I mean.
There's behind the scenes stuff too in terms of who's coming in with people and different people, how that might affect the decision making apparatus in Foxborough right now. We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about the Ben Johnson thing, and we'll also talk about, now that Vrabel is the guy, looking forward, potential offensive coordinator candidates, and what have you, and all of these things. We'll also put up your comments, and we're happy to entertain a lot of questions here. And again, I know people's favorite thing in the world isn't talking about necessarily the process, but it's part of the story and it's unavoidable.
100%. One other thing about the process, like, I don't know if we want to keep going on this. We could maybe just tie a bow on it here. But the reason this matters, and the reason I'm upset that they didn't have a more thorough search, is you heard last year, people were saying for the offensive coordinator searches and all that, they were not impressed by the Patriots interview process.
Yep.
That's a big part of this. So it's not like they have it down to a science and they know what they want. Like, people came in last year and were like, I don't know what that was. So you need to get better. You need more ideas. And that was the whole thing with the OC search. I want to get as many ideas as possible and I can learn, Why would you not want to do that for a head coach when you have a chance to learn from one of the best organizations in football right now? Again, it's not a made up problem. It's been reported. There's even reports. I want Elliott Wolf to get at least one more offseason to show what he can do. People even said that maybe he's too soft and he isn't as hard. I think, admitted that he's not as hard on the front office people as he should be. So that's why this isn't just like talking heads. Oh, you're complaining about the process. The process needs to improve. People who come in the building from other places told you that, or at least told reporters that, and they don't care. And that's the part that's really disappointing.
And also, again, down the road, if you're getting the reputation of a non-serious organization, God forbid something doesn't go great here and Vrabel ends up not being the hire, you're in Jets land in the next round of interviews. That's a horrible place to be. So again, short term, I don't think anybody would have had an issue, certainly if Vrabel was a head coach last year. The way you've gone about the process for 2 years will have impact on the franchise moving forward, if there's issues or you got to hire new people and this is how they get things done. So again, it does matter some. We'll talk more about it. As we said, Vrabel's the guy, and we're going to look forward into other things. We'll talk about the Ben Johnson thing and whether or not we wanted to. And because Taylor Kyles is not a man to make excuses for himself, I'm going to do it for him. He's not feeling well. He's been on the shelf for a couple of days. I don't even think he cleared the protocol to be able to be on this show, but I called him up and said, we got to do this, babe. I need your take.
I can't leave the house.
You got to jump in here, but he is under self-quarantine. He's a little banged up and he's soldiering through. So thank you, Taylor. Now, if he disappears or mutes from time to time, it's because he's hacking up parts of his lungs.
Yeah. And if my eyes are red, it's because I'm coughing.
But real quick message from our sponsor here, and we'll jump back.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on PrizePicks. It is playoff time, which means it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with PrizePicks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. You can now win up to 1,000 times that money on PrizePicks, and they now offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. PrizePicks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure, and when your picks hit, you get your money in as little as 15 minutes. All you have to do is download the PrizePicks app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS on the PrizePicks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Run your game, and I'll tell you, I smashed it. We did a garden report on Friday. I smashed yesterday's games. I had McConkey over on the yards.
McConkey over was so easy.
I had Nico over. I had Nico touchdown, and I had Henry over on the yards. I smashed my pick 4 in like a easy cruise control sort of way. So again, you want to jump in. It's a great time of year, fun time during the playoffs. You got 3 more games today, another tomorrow. So it's really great. You want to get in on that PrizePicks action here there. So let's get into the other guy. We understand why it didn't necessarily happen, but do you think Ben Johnson had a shot, or you think it was literally I like this guy, I just can't wait? Like you could have done 3 sham interviews. You could have done and not had Johnson. Johnson seemed legitimate and was viewed as a 1A, but a distant one to Vrabel. What do you think the thought process here is? Do you think that they were interested, but not blown away, interested, but knowing that, like, I'm not going to get a commitment from this guy, and I don't know if I can commit to him until we meet? And is the process flawed in terms of how you have to interview coordinators while you're able to hire other people, kind of creating this weird vibe? Because it's possible this was a legit dead heat, but you'll never know because because of the way things are set up in the NFL, restricting active coordinators whose teams are in the playoffs or, employees of other teams from really kind of pushing the process forward. Everyone else is kind of stuck here. You got a lot of people who want Johnson and who want Glenn, who are going to try to wait it out. And when you wait, you sometimes miss. But did they make a mistake here not giving this a more serious shake?
I'll say quickly, I do, but like I said a little bit before, I do believe that they probably took that Johnson conversation on Friday and listened. And we talk about this fact-finding mission that they have to go on, where it's not necessarily like, do I think they took Leftwich and Hamilton seriously? Unfortunately, I don't. And that's too bad for them. And it's a sham. And that's why the rule stinks. And that's why it stinks when guys skirt the rule and then teams take it to another level like the Patriots did to skirt the rule. I do think they probably at least took the Johnson interview relatively seriously as far as, hey, what do you do? What would you do if you were here? And so then they can take those facts and kind of turn them into what they want to see with Mike Vrabel, where you expand the analytics department, even just offensive philosophies and the way that, you would treat the franchise quarterback. Like I would trust Ben Johnson over what Mike Vrabel is going to do with Drake May, but ultimately there's more than just the quarterback. So do I think he had a chance? It's really hard to say. I think probably not, but I don't think they took the interview and, we're looking at the time and looking at their watch and watching the flies on the wall and say, all right, we got to get through these 3 hours just so we can start negotiating with Mike. I do think they truly listened, but I do think that it was probably pretty much in the bag after Thursday's meeting in Boston that Mike Vrabel was going to be the head coach.
Yeah, and I think there was legitimate interest because I think Elliott Wolf had the incentive to want Ben Johnson in the building. That seemed like his surest path to maintaining some high-ranking position inside the front office. With Vrabel, that gets a little shakier. He might not want to keep Elliott Wolf around. Maybe just this offseason because obviously there's a lot of hay already in the barn. But moving forward, also I wonder if Robert and Jonathan were on the same page. Again, this is purely speculation, but I wonder if Robert wanted to go with the safe thing where he'd already been burned. Let's go with the guy we know who's proven it makes the most sense versus Jonathan, where he's thinking, well, I'm probably going to be the head of this team pretty soon and for quite some time. So I'd rather look ahead at what's going to happen. Everyone wants to win in May's first contract, but realistically, winning in the rookie contract is not always the best move to plan for, because this is a guy you want to have sustained success with. But I really believe the reports, because everything that was reported is pretty much how it went, that Ben Johnson was seen as like a high-level backup plan, that he had to blow them away for it not to be Vrabel. And that tells me that there had to have been something that maybe they weren't expecting, or that Vrabel didn't kind of give to them, where it's, oh man, all right, well, this kind of adds something new that, Vrabel, what can you counter with this? That's kind of where I leaned with it, where it had to be something that just, again, completely blew them away. And we got the report that it went great, and apparently that wasn't enough, because they went right along with the process for Vrabel.
Exactly. So I'll give my 2 cents, and then we'll move on forward looking, because again, I don't think anybody is upset with the hire. And again, those of us who there
is a segment of Patriots Twitter that does not want Mike Vrabel to be the head coach of this team. I don't want
Vrabel. I really wanted. I understand the Johnson argument. Mm-hmm. You have no idea. He's unproven. That's fine. You have no idea what a proven guy is going to do either. You don't know. You ultimately don't know. Coaches who have track records somewhere else don't always go elsewhere and succeed. It's not guaranteed, but it's a nice thing, coming off of last year. But the Johnson reasons, I've, put them out there and made clear my own thoughts. The modern game, offense is king. Everyone's chasing their next McVay and their Shanahan and their Kevin O'Connell, and Andy Reid and these types of guys. And Ben Johnson's one of those guys. He's an innovator. He's not a copycat. One of those guys who's been plucked from the tree, and he's just kind of doing a bastardized version of a system he learned from someone else. We've seen how those guys don't do as well. So I love the fact that he's kind of his own guy and his own originator of ideas. And right now it's hard to say that anybody's doing it better than him. Number 2, you're only as good as your OC, and everyone's saying, I'm confident Vrabel will pick one. Great. What if you do and they leave after a year or two because someone else likes them? That's always, Bill had a huge issue with that. He didn't love the idea of going outside and hiring that hot OC when he lost the guys he could count on. Always wanted to, bring it up and promote from within. Which is nice if you can build a farm system here and you have people who are learning under you who are ready to step into the job. And 3, like I said, is the Crafts inching forward into the future, I think, was worthwhile, and not being so stuck on this Patriot way and legacy and family and familiarity. That's all fine and good, but it's not reason enough to do things. Just because a guy played for you doesn't mean they're going to be great for you. So that what it means is they're going to want to possibly return here because they like you or they like the organization. And Vrabel clearly did. So again, there were reasons for Johnson for sure, but now you're on to the Vrabel situation. So let's talk about it. What does he bring in with him? Number 1, we've talked about OC candidates, and let's put up a little list here. Here's a couple that you guys threw out there. Potentially, Josh McDaniels has been strongly rumored, and it wouldn't be surprised if this was a done deal, a package deal from the beginning. Van Pelt, his name is still in everybody's mix. This isn't something we just threw out there. If you go around and you look, other people saying who might be here, Van Pelt's still in the game. Tommy Reese, Chad O'Shea, Nick Caley, guys we've talked about, guys who've been around. The system. Nick Caley, somebody they talked to last year. Chad O'Shea with the Browns, right? Browns?
Yes, with the Browns.
So there's some other names here. And again, you have some Browns connections here because of Vrabel's little stint there. What do you find sexy? Again, I think I find an overwhelming faction of Patriots fans really want to do the McDaniels thing. Is McDaniels still like a cutting edge sort of guy that you want to, put on here?
I am for McDaniels for many reasons. And as much
as one reason I love him. Yeah.
The top reason should be his offense, but the top reason is that he's not going anywhere. And you just mentioned the rotating offensive coordinator where you bring in a guy and he does really well and he leaves, and you bring in a guy and you don't want that for a young quarterback. Now it can work that way when the quarterback is so good that they can just adjust. But I think the top reason Josh McDaniels is so enticing is that he ain't leaving. He lives around here anyway. He probably wants to keep coaching. He's been great here before, and he's never getting a head coaching job ever again. It has failed 3 times. It failed in Denver. He burned Indy on the tarmac, and then he left and was gone after a year and a half in Vegas. So The other aspect is apparently, according to reports and rumors and what people know, he has worked in the college game this year extensively with Ohio State, was the report from Patriots.com's Mike Dussault mentioned it last week, where he has sort of used this year off to innovate his offense. And so, look, if there's a good mix of what he's done in the past and what can sort of be forward-thinking offensive innovation, then I'm okay with that. He's worked well with quarterbacks. And obviously, Tom Brady is the big one. And I'm not saying, and nobody is saying, that Josh McDaniels made Tom Brady, but he was able to work well with Tom Brady. And then he got the most out of a shot Cam Newton, and he got the most out of Mac Jones, who we learned over the 2 years after, was never that good. He brought him to 10-7. They had the sixth ranked offense in terms of points when he was a rookie, and he threw for like 3,500 yards and 22 touchdowns. And so when you can do that with a young quarterback who is so, for lack of a better term, not skilled compared to what he could do with Drake May, sky's the limit. Strong, but I like the pairing. I think that they could make something out of it. Again, it's still going to have to, you're going to have to bring in the personnel. You're going to have to bring in the players, but with what Josh has done in the past with quarterbacks, multiple quarterbacks, turning that over into the fact that he's not going to leave, I think it's a great pairing here.
And when it comes to things that McDaniels could do to really bring the offense more into the modern age, and okay, you're going to college, what kind of things do you think you're going to see? Or how could he evolve his offense from what it was under Brady, under Newton, and under Mac? One, I think more of a reliance on outside zone, which is the curious thing for me, because the Patriots have always been a diverse run game, which is why, like with the Ben Johnson, honestly, there are some parallels, and they're very good at sequencing. They have that diverse run game. They know how to make it look like they're running no power, toss, whatever, and then getting play action off of that. One of the best things that a lot of the forward-thinking offensive coordinators are doing is the window dressing element of it, where it's a lot of weird motions. It's a lot of split flow where you have one guy going this way, another guy going the other. It basically spreads the defense apart. Like you kind of saw it last night on Derrick Henry's touchdown, right?
Yeah.
You had the threat of Lamar Jackson pulling the defense one way. You had an RPO pulling the next. Derrick Henry goes right up the gut, and he scores a long touchdown because just part of the Red Sea, right?
Did you see the dots that Mina tweeted where everybody went with Lamar? That was awesome. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you forgot I was Derrick Henry. But
Right.
that kind of stuff where the eye candy and forcing the defense to look in a lot of different directions. And I had to go back into 2020, 2021 to see how much Josh was actually doing in terms of moving the pocket, how he was adjusting for a young quarterback. And we saw little glimpses of it. Like we had the RPO glance routes. We saw that in the game with Joe Milton and Kayshon Boutte. Didn't see them with Drake May for some reason, but you saw that a couple of times. Like Kayshon Boutte, that catch he had where he spun out of a tackle, had a big game. That was the kind of RPO you'd hope to see more from maybe Josh McDaniels with the Drake May. Then you want to see more moving pockets. We saw that a lot with Cam Newton. They did it with Mac. That was more sprint outs, not really like bootlegs. But Cam Newton, not to the degree that I would want with Drake. I would like to see more of it. But he did that with Cam. Cam's arm, like we said, was just kind of shot. So when we talk about, all right, how can McDaniels bring his scheme to the modern age? First, let's not act like Josh is some washed offensive coordinator. Like, football is cyclical. Is he going to be the most innovative guy in the league? Maybe not, but he's a very good play caller. He's got a better resume than almost every single play caller or offensive mind in the NFL right now. And again, like we already mentioned, the fact that he's probably not going anywhere is huge for Drake May's development. We know the relationship we have with Tom Brady, where they're texting each other, I like this play, like in any random parts of the day. So I think that's good fundamentally for Drake to get that guy. We kind of split the difference of, all right, it's not Ben Johnson, but at least we have a guy that we know who's proven has all this, high level experience in these big games and is going to be with our quarterback probably the rest of his career.
So again, just to kind of circle back with given the names of candidates here, you're both kind of pro Josh, unless there's a wild card.
So I'm curious about Tommy Reese. I did some research on him. He's got a really interesting background. I did like a whole kind of preview. So one, he was with the Chargers in 2016. He worked with Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, Dave DeGuglielmo, former offensive line coach for the Patriots, Chris Shula, who's the defensive coordinator for the Chargers, and Ken wasn't on staff. Went to Notre Dame, was the quarterbacks coach there 2017 to 2019. The team finished 10-2 with a loss to the eventual champions in Bama. He got a lot of crap when he actually ended up at Bama in 2023 because they didn't end up winning at all. Nick Saban freaking loved this guy. had all the praise in the world for him, was saying, like, I'm not the kind of guy.
Oh, God, no.
No, I'm just saying. Well,
I don't want a guy who Belichick got, heard from Saban that I love this guy.
I don't know that he'd be a coordinator necessarily, but if he can be like a senior offensive assistant, a quarterbacks coach, something like that. Because Nick Saban said, I don't want a guy where I have to hold his hand, but he was resilient. He got a lot of crap early on and ended up playing well for us. Jalen Milroe was much better under him than he was this season. So Tommy Reese is a very, very interesting name. The NFL and football people love the guy. I don't know if I'd want to make him the coordinator. And obviously, if it's Josh, no one's ever going to be the coordinator again. But I like the idea of at least having quarterbacks, coaches, or assistants who can come in and give a fresh vision so that Josh can consistently kind of bring his offense into the modern age with maybe updating some stuff he could be missing.
I wonder, Reese is great. Bill Belichick actually beat out Tommy Reese as the UNC head coach. He interviewed for North Carolina's job. Saban apparently vouched for him for the head coaching job, and he was sort of their backup plan if Bill didn't work out. I would like to see what Tommy Reese can do. He's a bit of like that. He has that hothead to him, like Mike Vrabel, like Josh McDaniels, where there's this one viral clip of Reese. Now, this doesn't really add much to the conversation, but something happens and he's flipping out in the press box, like slamming his play sheet. There's something to those types of guys, but and that's why I wonder about him at his own, see if he's a little bit too much there. But again, a head coaching candidate in the past for college, an OC candidate here. So he has the familiarity with Vrabel. I think that's massive. If there's some crossover there with what Josh can do, I mean, that's all the power to them. I think having him in as at least a candidate is solid.
Let me ask you guys this question. Because you might only be as good as your quarterback, obviously, when you're talking about not only a head coach, but certainly an offensive coordinator. Now, I can't figure out where I land on this, and I'm curious what you guys think. Is New England a good destination for an offensive coordinator because they have Drake May, or a bad one because you have Drake May and nothing else in the world? And of course, you can get more, but if T. Higgins doesn't sign, you're into the second round of your draft, and you're going to hope for the next, McConkey to not pass up on. But the help's not coming in terms of weapons unless you land a huge fish. And right now there's really only one. There might be some incremental improvements, which I would expect. I think the offensive line, you're going to expect a little bit more out of those, or you might even go out there and get your tackle of the future, and you'll find ways to bolster that, but it might not be immediate. So you're walking in here and you want to show what you've got as an offensive coordinator. All you've got is Drake May. Is that enough to lure people here, or is that I don't want to go there and flounder around with this team?
I mean, we saw them at times be a top red zone offense, at times be a top offense everywhere but the red zone. There were times where you saw, this offense can actually move the ball pretty well, and that was largely because of Drake May. And then when it comes to solving all the other problems, that's going to come at some point. Obviously, you hope that the offense that Drake May had this offseason is the worst that he will ever have in his career. And they were still pretty damn good relative to what people expected them to be. So I think it's attractive because of Drake May, because you can get an offensive line. They've got a few pieces, but if you get yourself a left tackle, you get yourself a couple of explosive pass catching threats, most offense coordinators are going to say, I can figure, a really good one is going to say, I can make this work because I have the quarterback. He's going to make up for a lot of the deficiencies elsewhere, versus a team all right, if you have the Vikings, but then the quarterback is Bailey Zappi, do you want that job? I don't know. Right. I want that job, because if you're going to be good enough, in that Steelers area where you're not bad enough to draft a good quarterback, but you're not good enough to actually make a push in the playoffs and all these things because you don't have the quarterback, that's the worst place you can be in the league. So yeah, I would definitely lean towards the quarterback. And it sounds like that, as well as the resources and the ability that they had to potentially fix the offense this offseason in a lot of ways, is the reason that they were seen as the top. And I
think the resources you just mentioned, Taylor, is the kicker here, where you have Drake May, but it's not like you have Drake May and are hamstrung against the cap and can't make a ton of moves. It's not like he is the end all be all making 50, 60 million like some of the top quarterbacks are right now. I kind of like to shy away from you got to capitalize on a quarterback's rookie contract, because nobody's really done it since the Seahawks did with Russell Wilson. I guess Patrick Mahomes, because that's an anomaly. But regardless, you have the tools to build the roster around Drake May. It's not like you can't do anything and it's just Drake. It's not like you're Justin Herbert and the Chargers where they can't really do much because Herbert's making so much money and you can only rely on one guy in Ladd McConkey. You can make significant moves this offseason through free agency, through the draft. Now, that's why everything else outside the hire, the front office, the roster building is so massive. But I think it's attractive. Obviously, Drake May, but then you have the tools to really build it out here.
Another thing I want to talk about, and again, the OC is going to be the next really interesting conversation that's had, and we might hear some names start to trickle in a likely candidate sort of way sooner than later, which is great because we'll have a clearer picture soon. We also have a defensive coordinator, which.
Before we get to the defense, really quick.
I'm going to skip right over it. I'm going to literally say the words defensive coordinator, and then I'm moving on to the next thing. But if you want to stick and move one more time here on OC, you can.
Just really quick, Brian Hartline is another name that we should watch out for. He is I have it right here. He is the co-offense coordinator and wide receivers coach for Ohio State. Obviously, Mike Vrabel, Ohio State connections there. Wouldn't come in as the offensive coordinator most likely, but at least joining the staff. That could be huge for their receivers development in that capacity.
McDaniels worked with Ohio State this year as well, so there's a connection on that end as well.
Oh yeah,
there is no doubt about it.
And Wes just got fired. Wes Welker and Joe and Mike Vrabel worked together in Houston as well.
Yep, I like Wes. With no Bill here, Wes is possible. But anyway, for sure. Anyway, unless he joins Rex in New York, but we'll see. Another thing that I think is super important is how things are handled in the locker room as well, because I think this is, we believe a strength of Vrabel and something that really did not go great. Did not go great for this team. We're going to talk about that in a second, but first off, we want to tell you a little bit about what time is it, Mike?
It's game time, baby. It's Vrabel. This episode is also powered by Game Time, the best place to get tickets to anything, concerts, games, and more. They have the Game Time Picks feature that makes getting tickets even easier. It filters out the fluff and only shows you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. They also have the lowest price guarantee, and they have seat views to check out exactly what it's going to look like from your seat. So make sure you download the Game Time app today to take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Throwing this up there, Taylor's still there. Mike might have taken a powder, but that's okay. This right now is, we're talking about things you can get to, at least in town here. This is the Celtics for today, and some pretty good seats still available. It is a Sunday, so you tend to get these kind of like, families outings, but it's also coming off a really embarrassing loss, and it's NFL playoff Sunday. So this might be a game you could sneak into. I would keep an eye on Game Time if you're interested in checking out the Celtics later. Of course, whether you go to the game or not, you should watch the Celtics post-game show coming up immediately after the game, also here on CLNS. But if you want to go check it out, there's some really good seats very, very close to the action here at pretty reasonable prices. I'm looking at, and that's, 184, really close to the court. 192. These are incredible seats at pretty reasonable prices. So check out Game Time, download that code, use the CLNS for new users, use this CLNS code, download the app rather, use the code CLNS, $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Guys, we're jumping back in here with the Mike Vrabel situation, catching people up. If you're here, you'll know why. The Patriots hired Mike Vrabel to be the next head coach, replacing Gerard Mayo, who was fired after 1 year in a 4-13 season. Mike's been in the middle, so we'll stay with some continuity here. Vrabel, again, part of the appeal. There's two things Mayo didn't bring to the table. And one of them was a level of accountability. One was a vision. What are they beyond rah, we were going to run the hill and outwork you and be prepared, which they weren't. And so that didn't manifest on the field, but the stuff off the field started extremely early with the Patriots and definitely raised concerns like, who's who's in charge and who's going to do anything about this. And this goes from every single receiver popping off at one time or another. People constantly talking about being disappointed with their roles or what was going on when they weren't even performing well themselves. And then you have all the way down to the end with like a benching of a player who ended up not getting benched. It's really weird stuff, and not being able to get Jelani Tavai to shut the F up near the last week of the season after he stepped in it, insulted the fans. Mayo confirms that they spoke, and the guy goes back out there and does it again. So it was weird. So I'll ask you this. How is Vrabel going to handle the locker room? Is anybody in there right now got to be a little bit worried that like, oh shit, this isn't going to fly anymore? Because you come in as Vrabel, you want to be like, hey, I'm going to clean slate, right? I'll treat everybody the way they are. But he's got to know, I got a few problems in here, or some, if not bad apples, some that are maybe starting to turn. Like, I don't love this, and he might have to kind of kick some ass early to get this thing in order. But how do you think that's going to play here? And who on the Patriots might be like, like I'm in trouble here?
So I'll quickly just say that I think that he sort of blends the happy medium between the hard ass Bill Belichick and the locker room players coach in Gerard Mayo, where our colleague Mike Giardi, All 32 podcast here. I like that comment down there. Mike Giardi, BSJ, All 32 podcast on CLNS, where he spoke with Ben Jones, the former Titans center, and he wrote a really good piece on it for BSJ, where basically Ben Jones explains Mike Vrabel as he comes in the morning, he sends Ben Jones a picture of his Peloton stats and says, hey, fat ass, I'm working harder than you. Let's go, like, pick it up. And he's hard on the guy, and he wants him to be better, and he wants him to work hard. But on the flip side, if Ben Jones has to, for example, bring his kid to daycare that morning and shit gets caught up at home, Vrabel will be like, nope, that's all you. Go do your thing. We'll make sure that we're going to figure it out on our end. And so he gets it, and I think that that's the huge thing. And just sort of, I call it research, but watching, these Mike Vrabel press conferences and interviews over the last couple of days to try and garner what he's like, I feel like he just toes the line of being a hard ass, but can reel you in right at the right time to work hard. He's not going to alienate anybody. He cares for you. Now, a guy like Jelani Tavai who says that nonsense, he's going to rip him a new one, and it's going to be, this is why you can't do this. But guys should be on their toes, but they should also be ready for a coach who still does care about them and is going to get the most out of them on the football field.
Yeah, that Jelani Tavai thing would never have happened if Vrabel was the head coach. That's just like point blank period. But I think you're 100% right on him blending both cultures, because you do have the hard ass things where he wants to make sure guys are getting treatment when they need it. I know Paul Kuharski said he's not going to put up with a lot of dumb shit, where if you're not going to take care of yourself, and he preaches it from a player's perspective. And I think that's why Mayo connected with the players so well, was because he really did know what they were going through as someone who played one of the hardest positions in the game, a very physical, very demanding position, where if you didn't take care of your body, you weren't going to be able to play. So he says, hey, I want to get the best out of you so you can make the most money you can. Like, he doesn't try to fool them like, rah, oh, we're a family. We're going to get this done. Yeah, you want that camaraderie, but at the end of the day, like, in a losing season, what are you going to tell a guy? Oh, you got to fight for your brother. If you're being really honest, you're going to say, hey, and like, put some good tape on here and make some good money with your next team if you're not going to be here. Or, at least make some more money here, and maybe we can pay you, whatever it is. So I think he understands how to connect with them, but is going to be very demanding. He's going to be a hard ass, but he's also going to know everybody's family's in the building. He's going to have relationships. Like Rand Carthon, we always talk about how he and Rand Carthon was the reason, one of the reasons at least, he got fired. They didn't really get along, all that. Rand Carthon said his daughter had a picture of herself and Mike Vrabel as her phone background. Yeah. And his kids were like, why the hell are you firing Mike? That's kind of crazy, because given what it's reported, like, their relationship has been, I don't know necessarily that it's bad. They just didn't work well together. And to hear that, and that his kids love Vrabel so much, like, that's the kind of guy you're getting, where as demanding as he is, he's not going to go more the Bill route where you're a player, it's a professional relationship, and that's it. He also does have that investment in you as a person, which you have to give Mayo credit. He maintained buy-in because people thought that he was being sincere and looked out for them. He just didn't have the disciplinary aspect of it where it's like, yeah, no, I love you, but seriously, I'm going to work you to the bone and you're going to be mentally fried by Sunday night.
There's a couple other things to throw in here. One, I can't remember who it was. There's a great Mike Vrabel clip coming off the field with an offensive lineman from a few years ago during his time at Tennessee where the guy had played hurt and you could see
Jones.
Vrabel. It was Jones. Okay. Saying like I'm awestruck by what you did. Like I've never seen anything like that, the level of sacrifice. So again, that appreciation, I think that's always the stuff that like I've never quite understood a player's coach, a teacher that's soft on students, a parent. Like you have to be, here's my expectation first. And if you meet it, oh boy, is it going to be great for you. But if you don't, it's going to be really, really bad. And this whole like second chances, making it up as you go, not really kind of having an order or a way, not having kind of a leadership message trickle down. It doomed Mayo extremely early in this season where, I mean, again, the reporting done this week, you could see things starting to come apart after week one, which we thought was like, oh, wow, this could be different. And then, these loose strands that you could pull on. Also, not just the discipline part, you have multiple people coming out here regarding Vrabel. And yes, maybe he's not an offensive genius, but you have multiple people saying that he's one of the smartest players they've ever played with. You've heard it from, I think Brewski recently. Bill Belichick has said this as well. I remember he pantsed Bill Belichick a couple of times strategically. There was that great loophole about the what was it at the end of the game with the timeout or running time off the clock and taking a penalty and eating the clock when Vrabel thought of that, and Bill was frustrated, but he got the better of him there. So like he got
Taylor doesn't like that.
No, it was even funnier that
he ended Tom Brady's career.
It was out of his control. Like Vrabel was toying with him, and then a Patriot actually did something wrong without being tempted. That was even funnier. It's like, damn, he really got in their head.
He toyed with him. So like that stuff's great. Like you really want a guy to be a couple of steps ahead in terms of like the game managing and the strategy. And that's the big knock on Mayo is, what are you doing now? Like the adjustments weren't necessarily made. They didn't just appear to be prepared for a lot of situations. They kind of went in thinking they were going to do one thing or another team would do another. And if it didn't go that way, well, shoulder shrug, too bad. So there was definitely issues along the way there that I think Vrabel cleans up right away.
Also, one other thing, I kind of got to throw a damn towel on something. One other element that Paul Kuharsky told me about with the not accepting BS is Vrabel is not a fan of soft tissue injuries because they're usually nagging. They'll pop up, and you know who has nagging soft tissue injuries? T. Higgins. That was one thing when he told me, I was like, oh, God, no, because we've talked about it. It feels like if you don't get T, it puts you in a bad spot offensively. I think they could survive, but it still is much less than ideal. And I don't know if Mike Vrabel is going to throw $32 million at a receiver who might miss 3 or 4 games a year because of a soft tissue thing.
And that's where you look at this deal with Vrabel, where it kind of sounds or seems like he wanted it with the idea that he had full personnel control, where he's going to have a major say within the front office. And if that's the case, then it doesn't sound like T would be here for that reason alone, where I don't want guys who can sit out for this long because of this. I want guys who are going to be healthy. It is kind of, thanks for the damn towel, Taylor. Now I'm pissed off. But I mean,
remember when David Long, we were talking about him when he was a free agent and kind of like, why would they not want to bring David Long back? He's awesome. It was because, of course, he told me of the soft tissue injuries. They just didn't want to commit to him. And then apparently when Vrabel was gone, they actually tried to bring him back. And ironically, you know why he couldn't come back? He failed his physical.
Nice. So I'll ask you this, is the philosophy that, hey, guys who have them have histories of them and there's nothing you can do, or guys who have them don't train hard enough, prepare their bodies, and that's never going to change because they'll always be that way. And he views that as like soft, that you're one of those guys who's just always going to be pulling stuff because you don't get your body right.
I think it's part of it, because one reason you get soft tissue injuries and why when Ayuk held out, one reason people were really worried about how he was actually going to play, and the reason he didn't do very well even before he got hurt, was because he missed so much time. Like training camp, all these practices, they matter because it attunes your body to taking the physical hits you're going to. And if you miss out on a lot of time and you just go right back in there full speed like everybody else, That's how these soft tissue injuries happen. And I know T did go to training camp, so I don't want to throw him under the bus. I believe he was there. It was Jamar who actually sat out. But I think that's one part of it is a lot of the reason that you get those sometimes is poor preparation.
Yeah. And that would be a damper. So again, Vrabel, I think this is kind of where I wanted to pivot. The idea that, it's interesting. You can have a structure where you have a general manager or somebody who's in charge of personnel, who's the leader of the organization, and they determine everything. The Patriots have gone in the opposite direction, where last year they took on a collaborative approach. I think while the company line might be collaboration, and Kraft even said it in his press conference the day after Gerard Mayo was fired, he did say that Elliott Wolf is going to be back. There's been reports that Elliott Wolf is still going to be back as the top personnel guy, but there's been speculation that someone like Vrabel is going to have he's going to demand a much greater say in personnel decisions and or come in tandem with somebody who is going to do that alongside with him. What do you guys think of the likelihood of that, where Vrabel brings his guy in here and they're kind of running the show here? Like, Wolf remains, and I think he has to, and I think you need the infrastructure currently to head into the draft, but you almost wonder whether Vrabel and or anybody he walks through the door with on the personnel side are the veto power. Like, the information's been gathered, but we're going to kind of make the calls here. And I don't know.
I don't know how it goes. It's going to be fascinating because you don't want there to be a rift between front office and coaching, excuse me. And if again, right, exactly. It's literally for almost feels like years now, where even Bill was head of personnel, but he would not listen to the front office on some decisions, which has become sort of widely known now. And so there needs to be a semblance of understanding if they do keep Wolf in place, that these are the types of players that Mike Vrabel want and why. And your task is essentially to go out and find those puzzle pieces for us. And if Wolf doesn't want to do that, then maybe he sticks around in a lesser capacity. I find it hard to believe that he's going to take a demotion, but maybe he doesn't have a job elsewhere to kind of fall into. And so I feel like there's a good chance Vrabel brings in sort of his guy to coexist in the front office. And Ryan Cowden, I see it in the chat now from Anthony. I'll pull that out. And so, you hope and pray that there can be sort of an understanding that Wolf and Vrabel are on the same page. I just find that hard to believe. And so
who doesn't want to tap into Giants goodness by bringing in
But so I believe they work together in Tennessee too. And that's there. But
I mean, the Giants just drafted Brian Thomas Jr. and Tyrone Tracy. Like, it ain't a pretty good draft. I think
Malik Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I get the LSU receivers.
No, that's cool. But so I mean, you hope that they can work together. I think that the Crafts like him. I think they like him as sort of a mole/ear in the front office anywhere, where I work for the Crafts and this guy works for Vrabel, and we kind of mend the fence and work together. It remains to be seen, but I don't think he'll remain in charge. I don't think he'll continue to have final say over personnel, to answer the question on the lower third.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Mike Vrabel. Like, you bring him in, I'm sure the contract he signed was pretty hefty, and that showed me that you are committing to Mike Vrabel. You are not committing to Elliott Wolf. And I also I find it hard to believe that Vrabel was Wolf's specific guy. I think maybe he wanted, like the idea, but he has the connection with Johnson, not really with Mike. And I think Mike, because of what happened in Tennessee and because you committed him so much, he's going to want a lot of say. And I think he is. And I think a lot of that is going to be the final say, because it is the team that he's trying to build in his image, because he's the one with a proven track record of success, not Elliott Wolf.
So do you like that?
I do.
I wish they could just be normal and have it be like general manager, head coach, shared vision, but that's also why I don't think Elliott Wolf is long for this team, at least in the role that he's in now. I cannot see this time next year him being the executive VP of player personnel.
There needs to be the shared vision, and that's why GM and head coach need to come in at the same time and essentially be on the same playing field. Where, Taylor, I saw you go like this and like this. It really shouldn't be GM over head coach. They should be neck
but in
and
terms
neck.
of like the hiring process, really, it's supposed to be general manager than a coach. And
Right.
I don't know how much Elliott Wolf really wanted to make the decision of going with Vrabel.
I get what you're saying, but they do need to be on the same page where it's like you said, it's a shared vision. We don't see
Yes.
wide receivers differently. Why do I like this about wide receivers, but I like this, and this is the most important trait. No, this is the most important trait. No, that has to be the same page. And that's why this Cowden thing, I don't know if it's going to be riding Cowden, but somebody who shares the same vision for a football team with Mike Vrabel has to be in charge of personnel for this thing to work. There's no other way around it. That's the only way it will work moving forward.
And it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be times where even with the traits, they don't really see things the same way. But that's where you need the Vrabel, where the buck stops with him and he says, yeah, like I forget which story it was I was reading before we got on air, but it was Brewski who was saying like, yeah, I'm sorry, your opinion doesn't matter in this. And it's like, yeah, at some point Bill did it, and didn't make him popular, and he went way too far on one side where he just wasn't listening to people at all. But the buck does have to stop with somebody who can be like, yeah, but this is my football team. And with the way it's currently structured, that's going to be Mike. So again, that's why him and Elliot Wolf, it just seems kind of funky because they didn't choose to come in together. I think he is going to want someone where he disagrees with him less often than not, especially with the reports that Elliot wasn't really as what's the word? As I guess firm as he should have been with his front office members.
Yeah. For those who care about this kind of stuff, Vrabel press conference is scheduled for tomorrow, Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern from Gillette Stadium.
We'll be there.
Naturally, we will be there. Patriots, as we said, tomorrow at noon, we'll be there, hang out, and do some more reporting from down there, where the Patriots are announcing Mike Vrabel replacing Gerard Mayo. I'll tell you, reporters, I mean, tomorrow's going to be day one, and you'll get him to say some stuff, and then he's never going to talk to you again. And he's got a lot of Belichick, but he's actually better at it, because he really is. He has no problem shutting it down. So if media is gonna, I
remember Pricey was saying like, "Hey, if it's Vrabel, you got to be careful." I was like, I liked Bill. I liked covering someone who I could ask football questions and they would give me insightful answers and not force me to have to talk about bullcrap every single week in some random drama that didn't need to exist. So I'm cool with it. I'm excited.
Vrabel has the double whammy of being an enormous human in general, who's, one of the toughest guys in the room at all times, but also being extrememly intelligent and having no patience for anything that you have to say. So it's going to be an interesting combination here. We'll
you see the compilations where he walks off? There's all the best moments. Yeah. There's two where he just gets sick of it because he tells somebody like, I'm not going to answer that. They keep going. Bill didn't usually walk off the podium. He would just kind of give you the death glare or go nonverbal. Vrabel's not going to put up with it. I'm so excited.
Yeah. So again, good reasons to to be excited if you're a Patriots fan, and a lot of things are going to shake out here as we go. We talked about a little bit the process, whether we liked it. Again, I don't think it matters at this point. You're pot committed. They were headed down the road here the entire time. This is speculative, but how quickly do you think that this I'm wondering, everyone, the whole way through the reporting on Mayo, he's safe. And the Crafts never came out and said it. Mm-hmm. I believe Vrabel's been on the back burner for half the season. It wouldn't be stunning to me. You can't technically talk to him. He was an employee somewhere else, but there's no question that they had a really, really, really good idea that not only did they want him, but they could get him, which again speaks to, I think they might have wanted him last year too, and realized it fairly quickly and were, prepared to pivot if that happened. Any other leftovers here? We've talked about defensive coaches, new candidates coming in briefly, any new personnel. I don't know what that's going to shake out, but who survives on the Patriots coaching staff? Who do you think has a chance to take a role or remain in a role here? I've seen quite a few people talking about Van Pelt being instrumental in Drake May. You don't want to go through the multiple OCs in multiple years and take away somebody who's been there. Would Van Pelt be a guy you would keep around as a quarterback's coach, or in the same vein that he was here, was you're not the play caller, but will give you a position of authority, or might he move on?
I would quickly, Taylor, I'll let you kind of dive into the meat of it. I'd quickly say, I don't know how often guys would want to take a demotion, but it's different now that everybody else got fired, right? And so it would be one thing if Mayo stayed and then they asked him, hey, we want to bring in a new OC, but will you still stick around? He might have told you to pound sand there, where if he doesn't have a job lined up right now, And you could say, hey, we'll give you a senior offensive assistant quarterbacks coach, and you're essentially going to be holding Drake May's hand alongside our OC for the foreseeable future. I would like it. I think that's a money hire. And if Alex Van Pelt is for it, I'm all for it. I just wonder if he would sort of take that demotion and kind of be knocked down the pedestal while still knowing full well he was an instrumental part of Drake May's development this year.
Yeah, that's my thing, where I think he's going to be a name that other teams, especially ones that are going to draft or bring in, or even already have a young quarterback without good leadership, would want. I'm sure teams are going to call him, but are they going to call him to be a coordinator? That's the thing. If it's just an offer to be a quarterback's coach, and he and Josh, because it's same like left foot up footwork, a lot of West Coast principles, but it's obviously the Aaron Hart Perkins where the terminology is a lot different. The protections can be kind of different. I think if McDaniels thinks that Van Pelt's got his own thing. Like another thing we need to remember is like these coaches have egos. Alex Van Pelt's a nice guy, all that stuff. He's got an ego. He knows he teaches his footwork a certain type of way. He's been doing it forever. I don't know how much overlap there's going to be. So if they think they can work together and the only other offers Alex Van Pelt is getting is to be a quarterback's coach, I think it makes sense for him to stick with Drake May because that's a way to maybe elevate your status. Yeah. But if he's getting another offensive coordinator offer, which I'm not sure he will, there's no reason, obviously Drake, but I don't see why he would stay here as someone who wants to be a head coach in the future.
Well, how about Covington? And again,
Covington's screwed.
No, thank you.
He's already interviewed for a vacant DC job, but he did the years before too. And again, I don't know whether you think that's a dubious interview situation. I do wonder whether people are judged more going forward on who they were prior to last year as opposed to who they were last year, which is Covington was considered kind of an up and comer. And somebody people were excited about what they may or may not be able to do. The defense did not go well. And I don't know how much of the blame necessarily there, but would it be unreasonable to think that almost the entirety of the coaching staff gets cleaned out?
I don't think it's crazy because defensively, the two coaches you like the most are Mike Pellegrino and Steve Belichick. Brian, geez Louise. They're probably both out. Everybody else is brought in by Wolves, so their jobs are not safe. Offensively, maybe Scott Peters and his guys. And obviously, we've already talked about Van Pelt. But like on that, Bob Bicknell. He actually did work with Mike Vrabel at one point. Alex pointed out to me.
I think it was Kansas City when Mike was in Kansas City.
Bicknell was the tight ends coach. I think Vrabel was playing there. So Bicknell's job could be safe, but like Taylor Embry, Tyler Hughes, Tyquan Underwood, Jerry Montgomery, Drew Wilkins, Dante Hightower, who really struggled in his first year as a coach. I think those guys are gone because I don't really see, unless Vrabel doesn't have guys in mind and he's open to it. Like, I don't know what those guys necessarily brought that was so compelling. You're saying, I got to keep you, especially with Jerry. It seemed like Montgomery and Covington were on the same page when it came to the defensive line and how they wanted to attack. Like Covington mentioned a few times when I asked him about line games towards the end of the season, we have to do it the way the Patriots do it. And I was like, that's an interesting quote coming from someone who was in the Packers system forever. So,
well, one of the good things about moving fast, first to fire, first to hire, is maybe first to start plucking up, some of the assistant coach positions here. So again, I'm hoping that not only if Vrabel has known for a while, has had a good idea that he's coming here for a while, stands to reason he's had several conversations with people saying, I'm ending up over here. You down? You good with this?
I'm pretty sure that was reported by Jeff Howe. Like the second they fired Mayo was Mike Vrabel is ready, able, and
has
willing,
a team
and has his not offensive staff, has his entire staff assistants sort of picked out, which he's had all year long to do. Where he's been in Cleveland and he sort of probably took that as his main focus. But once he left, he sort of probably started to put this whole thing together as soon as they let him out of that contract.
And in Cleveland, he had a press conference where he was like, I've had the opportunity to work with so many bright young coaches. I was like, ding, ding, ding. Yeah. I know Tommy Reese is at least one of those guys.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where that goes, and I do wonder whether that's somebody that might potentially challenge McDaniels as the presumptive favorite to be the offensive coordinator candidate. Guys, we're gonna wrap, but I want to quickly ask whether you have any remaining thoughts. I also want to tell people here in the chat watching, there's quite a bit more Patriots coverage of the Gerard Mayo. Of the Mike Vrabel hiring coming up here on CLNS throughout the day. Mike Giardi dropping an all 32. That's coming up shortly. Greg Bedard is going to jump in and give you his take later on in the day as well. We might be back as well talking some football, but there's going to be a ton of stuff. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, give us a like, tell your friends about it, hang out, turn on your notifications. You'll know when we go live or when new videos post, but lots of stuff. And as the day goes on, more details will shake out. So we're going to have people who are going to be addressing those as they happen. We wanted to jump out here right when the news was, came out, which is around 10:30 a.m. that the Patriots had done what everybody expected to do, hired Mike Vrabel as their next head coach. The news first reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter. Guys, last little nuggets, anything you want to pick up here before we wrap?
Taylor?
I got one. We kind of talked about Mayo's firing and all that, and I feel like we need to bring up the fact that Chantel Mayo, Gerard Mayo's wife, took to Twitter or Instagram and was not very happy. She had some choice words to say where it kind of sounded like there was more to Gerard's firing than maybe we knew about publicly. No one's heard Gerard Mayo's side of the story yet. Here it is. It never even crossed our minds to tell the truth, but I couldn't even fathom all the lies we've read that are being told to save face. What happened to the class? We've been taking the high road and letting everyone do their thing since Sunday. But playing with someone's name won't be tolerated. I bet the fake stories will stop before the real ones start. There are also reports that players were questioning why Gerard Mayo was fired so quickly after the game. Players didn't really seem too happy talking about, the meeting they had with ownership the day that they were cleaning out their lockers. So wonder if we get some kind of story coming out about this, because did Mayo deserve another year? I'm sorry, no. Did the Krafts handle it well? No. They fired him we were even saying it, Mike, after it happened. Obviously, we were kind of excited because we thought it needed to happen. They needed a clean break, but it was also like his family's probably still here, right? Because just in the press conference, we found out 15, 20 minutes later. So the guy's family was still in the building. He probably went downstairs and told them he was fired. For an organization that wants to be all about class, that was a nasty, nasty move. You have no idea what's going to happen as a result of that. I didn't like it, and I do hope that Gerard's able to give his side of the story, because I don't know that he can defend himself as a head coach, but the way it was handled and the way he was fired, considering how bad Kraft felt about it and all that, that was some nasty, nasty work.
Yeah, and the way they propped him up from the start, they set him up to fail, guys. And we know this, and it's been well documented where he was only a 5-year assistant and he never really garnered a room. And I know he led the defensive meetings and whatnot, but it was just way too early. Kraft knew it. Kraft admitted it. And so for it to happen the way it did was just shitty on all parts. And again, hopefully they learn the mistake. Hopefully they give their next coach in Vrabel some leeway. Again, because he's done it before. I think that's the real factor here. But no, you're right. I'm curious to hear Mayo's side of the story, what happens. And if he thinks that the only reason he was even given the year was because that he put it in his contract and they had to give him a year. And that's the part that sucks too. Did he ever really have a chance? Maybe if they went, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins and were better and made improvements, but he might and probably should feel like, this was never really going to be his job long-term to start.
Yeah, I agree with all of you guys. It's a nuanced conversation, because you hear a lot the roster was bad, what else could he have done, and he deserves a second chance. But the only real reason behind saying he deserved it was because it's not cool, it's not fair to fire a guy in the first year. You knew all of it is right. It's not cool. He was brought in with the understanding he has no experience. He was brought in with the understanding that there's no expectation for this team and it's a multi-year rebuild. He was brought in being told that he'd be allowed to grow on the job and that they believed in something he had inside him, which eventually would come out as a head coach. None of that should change because they're supposed to be bad and they were bad. But it also doesn't mean he should have saved his job, because you have to at that point inspect whether you thought improvement was possible, seeing what you saw. And based off of that, I think the determination was that it was definitely too soon. And you do get the feeling, Mike, as you said, that Kraft might have been pretty worried about it even to start, like, because it was supposed to be a year later as succeeding Bill. So
and also Bill was supposed to help
another year to go, and Bill was supposed to help him. And the opposite happened, to the point that a lot of the reporting around Mayo was he's walking around the room like knowing he's the next guy. Bill knew it too and resented it, and they were completely isolated. It was a rancorous relationship, and so he didn't get the prep that year or for the 2 years he was supposed to get there. It was written in, felt a little hasty, felt like Kraft might have had buyer's remorse almost right out of the gate with it, and that, as you said, he was doomed to fail. So that's what it is. The future now is Mike Vrabel, and we'll see where that goes. Expect some other news to drop quickly in terms of people who are going to be coming in with him, which is great. And once that does happen, we will react. Taylor wants to jump in one more time before we wrap. Go ahead.
Report from Charles Robinson. He's hearing that Giants personnel advisor Ryan Cowden is expected to be added to the Patriots personnel mix, but not with the GM title. He believes Elliott Wolf will retain personnel power. However, Cowden's addition to the front office is Vrabel's preference. Dynamics will be interesting.
So,
okay,
there it is. As you guys speculated, he's coming in with a guy, and they're coming in with potentially a bit of a mandate in terms of how this is going to go. Here's my concern here. The Crafts have to, and who reported that?
Oh, that was Charles Robinson
from Yahoo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my concern. This idea of two different factions, my guys, your guys. The danger in it is a Knives Out situation, which happened late. I don't know whether Gerard Mayo's wife is upset with ownership or upset with the Wolf camp of who he had there, and they circled the wagons and didn't want, blame placed on them. You've heard Wolf say, the players I drafted didn't develop as we had hoped. That was clearly a shot towards Mayo and the coaches for, I got them good guys. They weren't necessarily good. And you have others, saying they weren't ready to play. They weren't like good players to begin with. We were really working with some difficult stuff here, that we were handed a bag of shit. You can't start this with factions at all. And so, while
no silos, like they said last year. No silos.
Can't do that right now. And I'm sorry, I don't know how much credit or blame Elliott Wolf deserves, but I will say, at this point, you got to go with Vrabel and his guy and just hope for the best, because this won't work. It will not work when you've got a team in place and a team coming in and trying to make decisions that are going to shape the franchise for the next several years. Cannot do it. This is a big cash year. This is a big draft year. They already kind of messed up last year. You can't do it again, because you're going to piss away Drake May's entire rookie contract on 4 and 5 win teams without any forward momentum, until you have to dump what's probably going to be $75 million a year on him by the time it's time for him to get paid or more. So get organized, get moving, get on the same page now. And if that means clean house, you got to clean house. I don't love the reports that Wolf still stays and Wolf still stays in power. That doesn't make sense to me if you're going to give Vrabel a lot of say in the personnel. So again, let's see how that stuff comes about in the coming days. And again, so much more to react to here. And again, we might even have it later. So again, keep it here, subscribe, like, do all of that stuff. We really do appreciate you guys hanging out with us here. Enjoy your NFL games. If you haven't already, sign up, check out Mike. He's got some of his prize picks up on the site. Sorry, I put up a different one. Prize picks, promo code CLNS, new users play 5, get 50 instantly. You don't even have to win. And those of you who want to get in, whether to see a Celtics game later this afternoon or any other hot ticket, download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, Taylor Kyle's under the weather, but putting in Herculean effort jumping in here on the stream. Mike Kadlick as well. He'll have more. You can also catch all of Mike's stuff over on si.com. And something else breaks, something else happens. Hey, you might see all three of our ugly faces here later. Well, these guys are pretty, but you might see us pop up a little bit later and talk about that. But as we said, much more stuff coming out on the channel throughout the day, which should be great. We are going to say goodbye as soon as I can find this outro, and there it is.